Traders, how are you? With Marcello this week on the recap of what happened in the markets, in the world, financial markets. Marijuana is going to get legalized, it looks like. We're getting progressive, quote unquote, progressive talks between the warmongers in Russia and Ukraine, and they're banning crypto. They even talk about the New World Order, which we're going to talk about that in just a moment too. I'm going to share with you a few videos of people that control things talking about that. Overall for the week, most of all, kind of a very similar types of news that have been happening over the last few weeks. Obviously, the situation with the war. There's a new I always think of the words in Spanish instead of English because I do the videos first in Spanish. But a brota, you guys know what a brota is, right? There's been a new outbreak. That's what brota means. In next week's Spanish lesson, what we're going to cover is, so there's been a new outbreak also with China that can affect the world economy. But it's kind of really just kind of more of the same. Overall for the week, U.S. markets mostly positive by very, very little. Canada was the only one in North America that was negative by 0.31%. There is a warning sign about an upcoming recession. Whenever the yield or the interest rate on the U.S. debt, they call it a treasury yield. Whenever the 2-year debt and the 10-year debt, the yields on these interest rates, whenever they invert, that means that there is a potential for a recession. Generally, not all the time, but generally. The last time that they did it was in 2019, and we know what happened with the pandemic in 2020. Obviously, it didn't predict the pandemic, but the recession did happen. And now it looks like they just inverted again, which is advising of another upcoming recession as well. Overall for the week in Europe, mostly higher. Russia exploded 11%. There's a lot of movement in terms of Europe being knocked out of their heating gas from Russia. That happened this week as well. I'll share that in just a moment. Latin American markets mostly mixed as well. And then Africa and the Middle East, Egypt was the biggest loser there at negative 4.18%. Far East, we have the Sensex in India going up by 3.33%, most positive of all. And then in the big news this week between crypto and also Bitcoin, Europe is banning the anonymous crypto wallets, essentially, things like Trezor and MetaMask. And what they want to be able to do is require that the wallets be on centralized exchanges, that they can do what's called a KYC. A KYC is know your customer, where they verify who you are, where the funds come supposedly, and then that's supposed to protect from money laundering, because obviously people don't launder dollars and euros. Now, I'm a little confused as to how they're actually going to regulate this, because if they're decentralized, a lot of these wallets, for example, I have 3 Trezors, right? So I don't know how they're going to regulate this. They can't block this from the internet. And even if they try to, then you just get a VPN, which is a virtual private network or a virtual private server, where you just connect to another server and then it'll allow you to use it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they think is banning, right? Because a lot of people have said that they can't ban Bitcoin because it's decentralized. So that's I'm a little bit curious about that, because I don't understand how unless they knock out the entire internet, which a lot of people have talked about blackouts, which I think is probably going to happen. I don't see how else they're going to knock out these anonymous quote unquote wallets. New York, they say Medellin, Colombia. You guys know that I'm based here. They say that Colombia is dangerous. There was a crypto millionaire shot 5 times at a New York hotel after they tried to rob his 450,000 Richard Mille watch. But Colombia is dangerous. New York, Chicago seem to be a lot more dangerous than anything that happens in Medellin, Colombia. In the government coin, what I call government coin news, there's a new e-cash bill that's advancing the digital currency aspirations of the United States. There was a U.S. lawmaker that proposed a large-scale test of a government-backed digital cash, and they wanted to direct the Secretary of Treasury to test an electronic version in public. A lot of people are saying that the bill most likely isn't going to pass, but it also shows the aspirations of what governments want to do around the world. In China, for example, you can't get a taxi with cash, with money, physical money. You have to literally show your phone. It's all digital already. And so this is what I always told you guys. What I thought was going to happen is not necessarily that Bitcoin is going to disappear. It's going to keep going up and down. I think I did talk about it on the English side, where I see a potential for a long squeeze at the moment, where I see a lot of behavior, especially in the price, where I think they're getting a lot of people out right now so they can surge in. And I wouldn't be surprised this time, for example, that if it gets to 100,000 within the year, not 2022, I mean within a year from now, for example, April 2nd, 2023. And I've told you guys before in other years that I didn't think it was going to hit 50K in that year, but this year I think it has a good potential to get to 100,000. But it shows you what kind of the future is going to be. And in one of these videos I'm going to share with you, with one of these world government, forums that they had in Dubai, they literally talked about the new digital, let's say, financial system. And they didn't talk about Bitcoin. They talked about blockchain, which I thought was always going to be the future. Blockchain for sure is the future. Overall for the week, Bitcoin is up 5.30%. It just went positive for the year at 0.71%. It got just above 44,000. In commodities, Russia says that they're going to accommodate a lot of companies and countries to pay for their gas and also their products in rubles. After all the sanctions, Russia basically said, well, you either pay us in rubles or we're not going to give you any more of our gas. And just today, Saturday night, while I'm recording this video, they literally cut off a pipeline. So it's going to be interesting to see what Europe does, because Europe, remember, gets 1/3 of its energy from Russia. And we're still in the middle of winter, or at least getting out of winter. In the Northeast in Pennsylvania, we just in the Northeast in the United States, not Pennsylvania, we had just a snowstorm. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens, because remember, this situation could have been avoided if the United States, one, didn't do a regime change operation in Ukraine in 2014. There was a pro-Russian president, a pro-Russian government, and then the US came in and changed the government for a pro-US government. And then they started talking about NATO, this and that. Obviously, I don't think the US would really like Russia setting up a base and operations in Mexico, for example, right? So not that Russia isn't to blame either, but obviously this could have definitely been avoided. So the pipeline's being cut off. It's going to be interesting to see what Europe, essentially the third largest economy in the world, all of Europe together after the United States and China, is going to do without any energy, because they already started rationing diesel gas and some gas there in Germany, which is the fourth largest economy in the world. So this is going to have huge ramifications. Oil had its worst week in 10 years after President Biden, instead of producing more US oil or paying Canada to bring their oil, we decided to negotiate with terrorists and dictators like Venezuela and Iran to give us their oil, because obviously that's a better idea. So what they think now is a good idea is to release 1/3, almost 1/3 of the strategic oil reserve that we have. And what's going to end up happening is we're not going to have any oil, which it sounds so stupid to me what they're doing right now that I don't really think it's stupidity. I think they're doing it on purpose. They want to just explode the price of oil so we all go on these electric cars. And remember that the US government told Tesla to shut off their cars in Russia. That's where we're headed. Good old one world government, baby. Precious metals mixed on Friday. Gold went down for the week 1.70% to 1,926, while silver went down to 3.68% to $24.72. I'm going to stop beating the bush with the explosion in the food prices and the shortages of food. I think we kind of hit the nail on the head there. Am I right? Fertilizer prices have exploded 43% to a fresh new high. And in financial and banking news, U.S. House of Representatives have passed a bill to federally legalize marijuana. The House of Representatives passed it 220 votes to 204 votes against. And it's also going to be retroactive to all of the previous criminal records as well. And on Monday, Biden is laying out a $5.79 trillion budget plan, which is going to institute a 20% minimum tax rate on households that are worth $100 million, the top 0.01% of Americans. In addition to that, the companies that receive compensation of stock for the companies that they work for. There are going to be requirements that they have to hold on to that stock for a certain period of time. And in addition to that, they want to raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. And in 2020, there were 50 Fortune 500 firms. In other words, 50 of the 500 largest companies in the United States made profits of over $50 billion, but they didn't pay federal taxes. I'm all for capitalism. Right? I think that's the best system because at the end of the day, when you have a big government, what it does is it steals our money. I think government at its height is just corrupt and bureaucratic. So the idea is to have the smallest government possible because we need kind of somebody to make sure that the rules are fair for everybody, right? But these guys should be paying taxes. Do you guys agree? I mean, come on, $50 billion. And then when the prices go up for inflation, no, they're not going to eat the cost and rent. No, they're going to pass those costs to us, right? I think that's a little bit unfair. Inflation in Germany has exploded to 7.3% in March, the highest in 41 years. Eurozone as a whole, the European economy inflation accelerated to a new high to 7.5%. And then Spain also went to their highest rate in 37 years to 3%. They went up 3% from just February to March. So if it was at the same rate over the entire year, there'd be a 36% annualized inflation rate. In other words, third world country. In political news, there was a meeting in Dubai about the New World Order. This is a really interesting video. There's going to be Spanish subtitles on the bottom, but listen to what they say because they talk about specifically how they're about to abandon, quote, they're about to abandon the old financial system and introduce a new one based on blockchain, and everything is going to be digital. Take a look at the video.
And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain.
So tell me about those conspiracy theories that weren't right. Make sure you start prepping. The preppers were right. Biden also in another, even though he talks about a lot of gas, I think a lot of times what happens is he talks about things that he shouldn't. There is a video where he talks about how there's going to be a new world order and we need to lead it. Check out this video now.
And now is the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there. And we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
Rappers were right. And for those of you guys that are listening on the podcast, just search for Marcello Arambide Trader or, I think that's the best way. You guys will find the videos channels that are on YouTube. In economic news, survey on Tuesday said that there were 11.3 million job openings for February, higher than the 11.1 million expected. Nearly 4.5 million people quit their jobs last month, and the job openings are hovering over record highs, even though the unemployment rate has dipped to 3.6%. So you can see this is, again, how the government manipulates the numbers to make itself look good. There's a record number of job openings open, but then the unemployment rate is at its lowest ever. Like, how does that make sense? Well, they don't count the people that stop looking for jobs. Simple. Other than that, in corporate news, the meme stocks are exploded again. GameStop was the leader. It went up 50% on Friday, bringing AMC, Bed Bath & Beyond, and even Hycroft Mining with it. They all went up almost double digits. They settled around 2, 3, 4, 5%. Tesla is announcing that he wants to do a stock split, a 5-for-1 stock split, to be able to pay a dividend to its shareholders. They're going to have that in they listed that in the SEC filing, which would be interesting because this probably means that it's going to be going a lot higher as well. In trade news, Japan's government on Friday approved fresh sanctions on North Korea after they recently tested another intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM, and they're calling on U.S. for a lot tougher sanctions on North Korea as well. In investment news, a lot of wealthy Russians are starting to invest and pouring money into real estate in Turkey and the United Arab Emirates. UAE is where Dubai is at, for those of you guys that don't know. Turkey didn't go along with the sanctions that the whole entire West is doing against Russia. So there's still flights from Russia to Turkey, which is part of the reason why a lot of Russians are moving their wealth and trying to invest somewhere else. And international events, I mentioned about how China is shutting down its largest city, Shanghai. They have a zero COVID policy, so they're having one of the worst breakouts right now. They're closing down bridges, tunnels, and even restricting highway traffic, and they're not letting citizens leave their homes. So a lot of manufacturing plants are going to go down. So the largest city and the second largest economy in the world is being shut down. It's definitely going to have some ripple effects throughout the entire economy. And on Tuesday as well, Turkey's foreign minister said that there's progress in Russia and also Ukraine, even though there was an explosion in a fuel depot inside of Russia, which Russia is blaming on Ukraine. So we're probably going to have this tit for tat back and forth until we find a resolution. And in unusual facts this week, via a genetic study found in bacteria and livestock that they did from 1970 to 2019, there was a study that was published in Nature Food that described that the bacteria is starting to show new strains which is resistant to antibiotics. Ironic how the Bible says at the end of times, we're going to have pestilences and also pandemics, right? Not specifically the word pandemics, but you know what I mean. Prepare yourself. The preppers were right. And on March 31st to April 2nd, the Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights, are going to be able to be seen as far south as the northern states in the United States. Places like Wyoming and Oregon and Pennsylvania, even New York, due to the fact that we have a strong geomagnetic storm from the sun. And something interesting as well, look up the Carrington event. That was a storm that came from the sun that literally destroyed the entire electrical system that we had. I believe it was in the 1817. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. Prepare yourself, because soon you're not going to be able to spend any money without the government giving you permission, and there's going to be food shortages. We'll see you next week.